The judge dropped his pen, and Cameron leaned back in the corner, arms crossed, as if he already knew what she would say. Wasn't a leak, and this wasn't reality TV. They told us it was over, saying the hotel clip was the end, but what actually happened in that courtroom left no one prepared. Chrissy didn't cry, she didn't deny, she looked the judge in the face, and she said the words that made the whole room stop breathing. It wasn't a one-time encounter. I was in love with Cameron dead, was a bomb, and Chrissy pulled the pin herself. There were no cameras, no script, no second takes, just the unvarnished, messy truth of the courtroom. What happened next were 2 more clips, a voicemail, and a sealed email thread in which Chrissy begs Mona Scott to remove the footage. But it's too late because the truth isn't just out yet. It's playing in 4K. And believe me, what she confesses next alters everything you previously believed. Rewind to that courtroom, back to the moment when Chrissy stood up, hands shaking, mascara-smudged lips, and made the world stop. The judge had just asked her simply put, Miss Lampkin, under oath, is there anything else you would like to share before we move forward with the evidence? No one, not even attorney, expected her to say anything. But Chrissy set the microphone, cleared her throat, turned to face Jim, and made a confession so shocking and raw that it left half the room stunned. It wasn't just an emotional mistake. I was in a relationship with Cameron. Not a hookup, not a fling, but a full-on late-night voicemails, burner phone, delete those texts kind of relationship, and she said it as though she was finished hiding, as if the guilt had already consumed everything else. Jim didn't say anything. Instead, he sat there as if someone had disconnected the man completely. 1 minute, he was Jim Jones, the Harlem kingpin, the devoted ride-or-die legend, and the next, he was just a man in a courtroom being grilled by the woman he had built a whole brand around. You could hear a pin drop, and even the court clerk appeared, to see a ghost. Cameron was sitting 2 rows back in sunglasses indoors, his head tilted slightly as if he knew this moment was imminent. Maybe he did, because perhaps this was the plan all along. Let's not act like this happened by accident. The signs were there. Last month, a USB clip cam was dropped, which wasn't just a sneak peek. That was a declaration of war. Chrissy, wearing a hoodie, sneaked into the Moran Hotel at 9:13 p.m. Reggie opened the door and Chrissy said, "Jim still thinks I met my cousins, Chrissy's voice was what sent the internet into a frenzy. Let that sink in. That wasn't even Reggie in the hotel. That was Cameron Jim's ex-stepbrother, his former friend, the man who once toasted at their engagement dinner. Chrissy just sat there on the stand telling the world she was with him. The courtroom didn't explode. It froze. Mama Jones stood up so quickly that security had to grab both of her arms. She was screaming, "Wild-eyed, you snake, you ruined my son." Chrissy didn't flinch, didn't even cry. She looked exhausted, not sad, not sorry. The situation worsened when Jim's lawyer, who had remained silent the entire time, got up, leaned toward the microphone, and said, "Your Honor, based on this new admission, we'd like to file an immediate motion for fraud, emotional abuse, and brand sabotage." Let's talk about that. She wanted to submit her own evidence, including screenshots, travel logs, and photos from burner phones, to confirm that everything Cam had already leaked was only the surface. She called it the unfinished truth. The entire Jim and Chrissy machine wasn't founded on love. It was monetized through VH1 specials, spin-offs, brand deals, podcast cameos, merch, and wedding rumors that sold out interviews like tickets. And now it's all falling apart because the foundation was phony. The woman Jim called his day one was whispering secrets to his rival under oath in court on camera. So how did we get here? Insiders say it didn't start with Reggie, didn't start with Cam, and began with resentment. Chrissy's relationship with Cameron wasn't a one-time rebound. According to court documents, she allegedly met Cam privately on 8 separate occasions over the course of 2 years, including hotel check-ins, private flights, unregistered dinner reservations, and that USB. At that point, Cam returned to the scene. She reportedly told producers, "I'm not here to be his accessory. I'm building mine." There are more videos and a voicemail that was recorded in which Chrissy calls Mona Scott directly and says, "Cam can't know. He'll use it. Please just make sure the footage is wiped." Oh, and that Cam also leaked that. Now you're probably wondering, where's Jim in all this? He hasn't spoken in public, but inside the courtroom, his silence was loud. Witnesses claim that his hands were shaking beneath the table where his lawyer handed him a stress ball, and he never looked at Chrissy once during her entire testimony. As Chrissy's testimony came to an end, the judge asked if anyone else had anything to submit before recess. Guess who stood up? Cameron's lawyer held a brown folder and said 7 words that made everyone in the room freeze again. "We have more footage, and it's dated." Cameron's lawyer didn't raise his voice because he didn't need to. This isn't just betrayal, it's surgical heartbreak, discovering that your worst enemy became your girl's safe haven. Enough to flip the courtroom energy like a breaker switch. "We have more footage, and it's dated." The judge didn't blink. "Submit it to the clerk," he said, calmly, but you could hear the tension tightening his throat. The judge moved like he was walking a bomb to the bench. And perhaps he was, because when that folder hit the judge's hand, everyone realized this was a demolition, and Chrissy looked different. Her eyes dropped to the floor, her lip twitched, and her blank stare cracked just a little, as if she already knew what it contained. Perhaps she recalled what she had said on that tape. The judge opened the folder, took out a USB, and said, "I want this played now, no delays." Jim's lawyer didn't object, but Cam's nodded, and Chrissy's was frantically whispering in her ear. She simply shook her head, saying, "No, it's okay," and then the projector powered up. Then there was silence, then static, and finally Chrissy, in a studio trailer, hair wrapped, without makeup, sitting. The other voice replies, "It's Yandy Smith. Girl, you're playing with fire. You know Cam hates him. You get caught. It's not just a scandal, it's war." Chrissy sips her drink, then says it. The line that burned a hole through the court. "I already got caught once. I talked my way out, but next time I won't lie." The screen goes black, the court freezes. Chrissy just sat there with her hands folded and her face blank, as if she had already accepted her place in this story. However, it wasn't over because the judge turned to face her and asked, "Manon, are you speaking in this footage?" She nodded once. "Yes, sir." And he repeated, "And this is from a Love and Hip Hop trailer on set, unedited?" She replied, "Yes," this time without hesitation. The judge then turned to VH1's attorney, who acknowledged that they were in the room now, sweating, scribbling, and whispering into phones. Why was this footage not submitted in the original subpoena request? The lawyer for VH1 stammered, "We weren't aware it existed. It was recorded by a crew member off schedule. It wasn't logged into our system." The judge raised an eyebrow, but it's clear that Ms. Lannon and Ms. Smith are talking about the possible consequences of leaked content, and they both acknowledge. Cam's lawyer stood up again, saying, "This is a voicemail dated 2 weeks before that footage sent by Ms. Lampkin to Ms. Scott Young." A file was played, and Chrissy's voice was heard again, panickingly whispering, "Mona, I told you that if Jim finds out, the entire season's ruined. Cam can't know either." There was silence, and Cameron was still watching as if it were a show. Jim was still moving, and Chrissy was frozen in quiet surrender. It took 3 minutes to calm everyone down, and once they did, the damage was already done. This wasn't just about cheating anymore. It was a cover-up, a manipulation of production, and an attempt to destroy evidence during an ongoing legal matter. VH1's lawyer appeared to be enjoying his career. "He'll use it. I need you to handle that room footage," Reggie said, swearing it was wiped. "You promised." The courtroom went silent. In fact, a man in the gallery literally stood up and yelled. Jim got up without anyone noticing, and he looked directly at Chrissy. His lawyer tried to stop him, but he ignored him. He asked her softly, "Was any of it real?" as the question hung in the air like smoke. Chrissy's lips parted, and she blinked, before looking down. She didn't say a word, and that silence was louder than a slap. Jim nodded once, then turned and walked back to the table and sat down. His lawyer whispered something in his ear, but Jim didn't react or flinch. Then he pulled out a document and handed it to her. His attorney stood up and said, "Your Honor, Mr. Jones would like to submit a motion to countersue Ms. Lampkin for emotional distress, intentional deception, and brand fraud." The judge was shocked and asked, "You're filing now?" The attorney said, "Yes, today." However, the courtroom wasn't finished with twists before a clerk entered with a sealed envelope that said, "From Homeland Security," in a quiet voice. The judge opened the envelope, read it silently, and then looked up face. The judge wasn't having it. "We'll take a 30-minute break, but will this chaos?" Mona Scott's team looked like they were ready to disappear into thin air. VH1's representative began gathering papers as if they were going to be subpoenaed themselves. And Cam just grinned because this is a serious matter. This court has been informed that Ms. Lampkin is also being investigated for obstruction in connection with an ongoing charity fraud case linked to the footage mentioned in earlier hearings. It wasn't about Jim anymore. Rather, it was the slow-motion explosion of a whole brand, one confession at a time. And even though the brown folder with more footage written on it was still filled, Cam's lawyer gave it to him as the judge stood up and recessed the court. In the last text on the page, she said, "If the clip drops, she'll deny it, but I'm done protecting her. Let Cam have it. Let them all burn." 30 minutes felt like 3 hours. People didn't leave the courtroom during recess. They paced, whispered, and stared at Chrissy. When court resumed, the tension was so high that it seemed like sound could not travel. The judge returned, put down his papers, and wasted no time reviewing the final items submitted by the text. As if she were a reality show villain who had just stepped off the screen and into real life, Jim Jones didn't look at anyone, not even the judge, the reporters, or even Mama Jones, who sat behind him clutching a tissue as if it were the last thing she would ever see. However, Cam didn't blink, shift, or speak. He just sat there cool and silently deadly, as if he knew the credits were about to roll and his name would be the last one on screen. The log was recovered from a burner phone belonging to a person named Reggie. He read the page slowly, and she said, "If the clip drops, she'll deny it, but I'm done protecting her. Let Cam have it. Let them all burn." Then came the second message, which the internet hadn't seen, and which Chrissy believed would remain buried forever. She used me to make Jim jealous, saying that Dipset was finished and that she wanted to feel powerful for once. She said that Cam treated her like a queen, and I was just the cover. A woman in the second row again muttering, "Oh my God." And Chrissy was still silent. The judge asked her directly, "Manan, are you aware of these messages?" She nodded once. "I am now. Do you deny their content?" She paused, closed her eyes, and then whispered, "No." At that point, Jim's attorney reappeared. "With your permission, Miss Lannon and Mr. Jones signed a contract that outlined their co-ownership of their upcoming Netflix documentary series." The judge skimmed the contract and asked, "Ms. Lampkin, were you involved with Mr. Giles and Mr. Cameron during the planning and promotion of the series?" Chrissy took a deep breath before saying the line that made this entire trial historic. There were brand equity clauses, emotional representation terms, and exclusivity conditions that we now believe were violated. If that contract was real, then if Chrissy broke terms during the recording of a show meant to be about their forever love, this wasn't just emotional warfare. It was legal sabotage. She lied on camera in court and to a man who once said, "Chrissy saved my life." Yes, I was, and I knew that if Jim found out, everything would fall apart. The affair with Cameron began before the series was pitched, before the trailer, before the reunion special, when she sobbed about wanting to grow together. Jim didn't stand and didn't react. He just whispered, "I knew it." To no one specifically. Then he left without a statement, no publicist, no security, simply a man leaving. The remains of a life he believed to be real. The judge ordered a 5-minute break, but it was too late for VH1 because minutes after Chrissy's complete confession hit the media, sponsors began removing emails and screenshots from producer group chats that were leaked online. One of the messages read, "Mona's ghosting everyone, I think she's done." Another said, "We're looking at class action lawsuits if this footage goes live." And then came the knockout. A former VH1 editor posted anonymously, "You don't." The SARS Chrissy confession hashtag reached 7 million views by nightfall. Clips of her testimony were layered with depressing music, glitchy edits, and captions like, "She wanted fame, he wanted forever." Cam went live that same night wearing a black hoodie, minimal lighting, and the phrase, "I told you she wasn't built for him." He then logged off. They made Jim believe in love for the sake of camera angles, and Chrissy played along until she didn't have to anymore. With a press release that received 2 million views in less than an hour, Mona Scott finally spoke. Up. She said, "I was unaware of Miss Lampkin's actions behind the scenes, and I am cooperating with all legal investigations moving forward." However, no one took her seriously because, at that point, producers' assistants and interns were crawling out of the woodwork, spilling emails, and revealing deleted scenes. One scene in particular was a cut clip from the Netflix series where Jim asks, "Chrissy, point blank, do you still love me?" The love story that defined VH1's Ride or Die branding was suddenly reduced to a well-edited lie. Jim has reportedly gone completely offline. His team released a statement focused on healing. More than anything, fans are now claiming that she looked left after saying it, as if she was looking for a cue that it wasn't real. Even worse, the episode's editor acknowledged that they cut out the next line Chrissy had paused and whispered off camera. I hope that's enough for now. Chrissy has reportedly signed a distribution deal for a documentary series called The Footage They Tried to Bury. In the teaser trailer, there is a shot of Chrissy's face frozen in the middle of the sentence with the words, "If this gets out, Jim's going to." No posts, no press, no denial, just one quiet Instagram story the night after the verdict. The caption read, "You can love someone and still break them. The internet wasn't having it." Comments poured in, "Delete this. Jim deserved better. Cam used you. You let him and Cam to leave me." Cut to black. Cam's voice. I learned that the trailer is over. The full series premieres next month. And VH1 is silent because the world heard the confession, not just the court. Now that no one is watching the show, they're watching the fallout, so the only question that's left is whether it was ever real. After all, no reality TV show can script this kind of heartbreak, and no producer can save you from receipts. The story is over. The truth is finally out, and the brand is dead. Forever. Forever.